Hi, everyone. How are you? Happy Thursday. I'm only 10 minutes late, so I'm not really late, is how I feel about it. Let me know if you can hear me. I know there's usually like a little bit of a lag. Also, cheers to the last Thursday in dry January. I'm very happy about it. It hasn't actually been that bad, which is good. I was curious to see, like, how's this gonna feel for the whole month? It's been fine. So today we're gonna talk about my favorite thing, which I feel like is my arch enemy arch enemy in life, which is student loans. We're going to talk about student loans, but specifically the cost of education in this country. So we hopefully will be having a holistic conversation about the entire topic. All right, so here's our agenda. First, a quick thank you to our sponsor. Then we are going to go year by year through the rising cost of education and through a little bit of alleged Ivy League price fixing in terms of one of the lawsuits filed against Yale, Brown, Penn, and a few other Ivy League schools. Then we are going to get into the Navient lawsuit, who qualifies, who's getting a check, who's not getting a check, who thought they were getting a check because Navient also decided that they will no longer be servicing certain student loans. So they started transferring people and caused a whole bunch of foolery. And then we are going to talk. Oh, I thought I updated this. I don't know if we're going to get to the student loan forgiveness and the racial wealth gap, but we'll definitely get to how other countries handle their education system and the cost of student loans. So we will see how far we get in the discussion, because I realized the agenda was a little bit aggressive. So I don't know if we're going to get to all of it, but how are all of y'all? Hey, Sam. Hey, Opulence Prime. Hey, Lakeisha. So let's first say a quick thank you to our sponsor. So I will make myself small so y'all can see that. Our sponsor today is the Big Law Investor, which is one of the financial websites I've been following since I was in law school. Excellent website. So following long before I had this YouTube. Basically on their site, you can find anything about student loan information. You can find anything about basic investing information, all written in layman's terms. Very easy to understand. Highly recommend. And no, it's not just for people who work in big law. I've never worked in big law. It's also not just for attorneys. So highly recommend. I'm going to share their link down below in the description box, as well as I'll make a comment to it, and then I'll put the link here right now. And if you sign up to their newsletter, it's the best newsletter. It's the most informative. And also with that, they only send the newsletter once a month, which is great. So you're not going to get spammed. You get the newsletter once a month, get the information you need. And basically, they've kept me up to date with my student loans in terms of motivation, kept me up to date in terms of what is happening with the student loans. Currently, federal student loans are in forbearance. But if you have private student loans, I highly recommend going to the Big Law Investor website and looking into refinancing your student loans. So if you have private student loans to the tune of 7, 8, 9, 10%, right now the interest rates are pretty low. I'm seeing interest rates on their site 2, 3, 4%, can save you a lot of money. So highly recommend checking out their site at thebiglawinvestor.com. Biglawinvestor.com. Remove the. All right. So with that being said, let's get into the runaway cost of American higher education. So I think a visual is needed because sometimes when we have these conversations, people are very much, you signed your name to that. Stop complaining, blah, 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 without looking at historically how the hell did we get here. So these are the Antonio, you should check out Big Law Investor if you have private loans. If you have federal loans, you're currently at 0%, so I don't recommend refinancing. But if you have private loans, you should check them out because SoFi sent me something in the mail the other day for 3%, which we're going to get into my specific student loan interest rates. They're very high. I've seen some sending at as low as 2% for certain rates. So you can go ahead and check that out. All right, cool. So we're going to go through the years, through the decades from Stacker, the cost of education. And this is the entire 4 years back in the day. Oh, I think I'm a little bit in the way. I'm just going to remove me. Okay. So 4-year education in 1970, and this is adjusted for inflation. So in the actual money from back in the day, it technically was less, but adjusted for inflation now was $8,131 approximately for 4-year public education. And that is including room and board, some food, those expensive books, and your tuition. Private college education in 1970 was $16,807. Super cheap. Child, $16,000 now wouldn't even get you a semester of private education. Now, 1980, it jumped not really that much. So we went from $6,000 to public education costing $7,439. And this is all in. This is everything for the whole 4 years. Then 4-year college education stayed around the same, around $16,000. Now, look, this is a 4%. So this website that I pulled this from, Stacker, had every single year, which I thought was like very fascinating. And I did check it against a few other databases as well. Oh, thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super sticker. Exactly, Lakeisha. Girl, this is 4 years of college education for this price. We were really born in the wrong time. However, there were other issues in the 80s that I really don't want to have lived through. So I guess I'll take this. Not really. We still shouldn't be paying so much. What I find really interesting for the private 4-year college education, it went down. There was an actual decrease, 4% decrease from the prior year, which is amazing to see that happened. Also, if you feel so inclined to donate to the channel, all the money goes towards my student loans. In case you're wondering what I'm doing with the money, that's where it's going. So thank you, Robert. Now, let's fast forward a little bit from 1980 to the year of 2013. This is when I graduated college. So a public 4-year college all in 2013 would have cost you $18,742. I would say in Florida, UCF was around 20 grand all in. So a smidge more than this is saying. And that's because, to be honest, they built these really nice student housing apartments that were also very expensive. So that's probably why it was a little bit more. So with that being said, and then private 4-year colleges in 2013, all in were around 37 grand. I didn't go to a private school to know if how close to accurate that is, but if you went to private school, let me know. So fast forward from that, where did we fail? Where did the problem occur? So what happened in the year of 2013? Let me go back really quick because I forgot one thing. So in 2013, and it's written, let me make myself small. I'll remove myself. It's written very small. In 2013, that was the year that ushered in staggering rates of student debt throughout the nation. On April 25th, all of the student debt surpassed $1 trillion for the first time. It has been past $1 trillion since the year 2013. Now, what caused that shift? And that's what we're going to get into now. So in July 29, 2013, our Congress decided they didn't feel like doing their job. And that day, it was official, student loan rates will double on Monday. Student loan rates were capped at 3%. And because Congress decided that they did not know how to work together, student loan rates automatically doubled. They had written into a prior bill that student loan rates were capped at 3.4%. They then doubled to 6.8%. I have the student loans to prove when that exactly happened, because all of a sudden you see my interest rate is very different, which we're going to go through my personal interest rates. Usually a different demographic watches it, but I do have a whole monthly series where I go through my student loan breakdown, like what I'm paying off to keep myself accountable, and then hopefully, to help y'all as well. It can be very lonely paying off 6-figure student loans. So, all right, let me continue on. So despite the introduction, y'all see this? Okay, perfect. Despite the introduction of several bills to serve as a solution, lawmakers will leave. This is from ABC News back in 2013. Lawmakers will leave for the week-long July 4th recess without implementing any of them, letting the July 1st deadline pass. Any students taking on or renewing federal subsidized Stafford loans after that deadline can expect to pay, for example, an additional $3,000 on a $23,000 loan paid off over 10 years. The average American does not pay off their student loans in 10 years, which we're going to get into. So that little, it's just $3,000 worth of interest is not actually correct, as we have seen. And let's go through my numbers, because they're on the channel anyway, and I'm not particularly, shy about them these days. I feel like the more honest you are with your student loans, the easier it is once you finally make enough money. It took me a long time to make enough money where I could afford to eat and pay my student loans. You can pay them off. So these are my student loans. All the ones you see checked are the ones that I've paid off. I started my student loan journey right before the panorama, February 14th, 2020. That was my Valentine's gift to myself to start freeing myself from the hellhole that is student loans. And yes, this is not even the original principal balance. The original principal balance with the capitalized interest was $281,000 plus the other accruing interest was $304,000 is what I started with. So you can see here when the interest rates went up, which the interest rates were set and still are set by Congress. So Congress said, to hell with you young people. When we went to college, it cost approximately $5,000. I don't know what's wrong with y'all. Y'all go find the money. My highest interest rate is 7.21%. There's some 6.84% in there. There was a 5.41%. And you'll see everything that is basically less than $6,000. Those are all from college. I had a 75% tuition scholarship for college. Most of that was for room and board that I borrowed because state schools A are cheap, which is great. And then B, most of mine was paid for. So you see where like I had the 3.4, which was the maximum that they were allowed to charge me. And then you see where all of a sudden the 3.4 changed. These aren't in any particular order. I just ordered them by smallest to largest because I'm doing the debt snowball. So you can see like for one person's example, how going from, 3.4%, all of a sudden 6.4, 6.8, the 10% interest rate is from Sally Mae, who is, I was going to say a curse word, but it's a sponsored video, so I'm not going to say it. Who is not my friend, who I cannot stand. 10% interest rate from Sally Mae. And in terms of when you are that age, none of those numbers mean anything to you. It's, are my school fees paid? Can I buy my books? This is what that then turned into. 6.8 interest rates, 7.4 interest rates turned into $39.78 in trifling interest every day for law school, specifically from the day I signed for the student loans from college after graduation. Then it started every day. And do you know what basically $40 in interest turns into after 4 years of graduation and you trying to pay the minimum? It turns into $75,000 owed in just interest of money I didn't borrow. So I wish this was wine. But yes, we can get into strategies to pay down your debt, which is why I have like that separate series. But I think it's very important for people to realize most people that owe a lot of money in student loans did not borrow that amount of money. I didn't borrow $304,000. I borrowed $225,000, which is still a lot of money. However, when law schools tell you you'll make $180,000, which I've said this a million trillion times, I have never signed an offer letter for $180,000. $225,000 didn't sound too bad until you realize you graduate law school and I made $30,000 and also racked up $75,000 in interest. Then you run into a problem. So with that being said, people are borrowing student loans to go to allegedly prestigious schools, and those schools are now being sued by the federal government for allegedly running a price-fixing game. So Yale, Georgetown, and a few other top schools are allegedly colluding. So, oh no, hold on. Let me refresh this. Hold on one second. Okay, let me make sure we're on the right. Okay, perfect. Hold on. Did I ever? Maybe I didn't. This is what happens. I use the same templates. Okay, cool. Now I think it's right. Okay. Slideshow. Perfect. All right, so let me read to you the schools. And yes, this is Yale's favorite alum, GW. So I just want to put that in there. So Brown University, California Institute of Technology, University of Chicago, Columbia University, Cornell, Dartmouth, Duke University, Emory, Georgetown, Massachusetts, Institute of Technology, aka MIT, Northwestern, University of Notre Dame, Penn, so University of Pennsylvania, William Marsh Rice University, Vanderbilt, and Yale are all being sued by, I said the federal government, I was wrong, by former students. And basically, the students are alleging, hey, you are setting the price of tuition higher, because they are alleging that all of those schools came together to say, like, you know what? We don't want the kids that need financial aid. We want the rich kids that can pay, because if we get the rich kids that can pay, we can raise the price of tuition and we'll get more money. So that's the allegation. So we're going to read a little bit from the lawsuit itself. So y'all know I cannot see this. So hold on, which means that you probably can't see this either. Hold on 1 second. Okay, perfect. So defendants are private national universities that have long been in the top 25 of the U.S. News and World Report rankings for such schools. These elite institutions occupy a place of privilege and importance in American society. And yet these same defendants, by their own admission, have participated in a price-fixing cartel. I love dramatic attorneys. They're like, this is a cartel that is designed to reduce or eliminate financial aid as a locus of competition, and that in fact has artificially inflated the net price of attendance for students receiving financial aid. So paragraph 2, defendants, so there is an exception, and that exception says, like, okay, under the exception, you don't have to have a need blind admission system. What the students are saying is that these schools should not be allowed under that exception. These schools should be looking at everybody. And these schools should not be assessing, like, okay, if we know Stephanie don't have any money, we don't want to admit her because we don't want to give Stephanie financial aid. They should be doing a need blind assessment, is what the schools are saying. And what is not what the students are saying. Sorry. All right, cool. So far from this practice, at least 9 defendants for many years have favored wealthy applicants in the admissions process. These 9 defendants have thus made admissions decisions with regard to the financial circumstances of students. So it hasn't been need blind, according to the defendants. According to the students, which are the plaintiffs, they're saying, okay, you assess that I'm lower middle class, you assess that I'm middle class, you assess that my dad is not GW and therefore can't pay this, so you decided to either turn me down, or you decided that you would admit me, but because you admitted so many wealthy students, you jacked up the price because you knew that the wealthy students could pay the price. These 9 defendants have thus made admissions decisions with regard to the financial circumstance of students and their families, thereby disfavoring students who need financial aid. All defendants in turn have conspired to reduce the amount of financial aid they provide to admitted students. This conspiracy, which has existed with slightly varying membership for many years, thus falls outside the exception of antitrust laws. So antitrust laws are a set of laws in the United States. It usually comes up a lot in sports. The NFL, the MLB, the NBA are every decade, at least once, the federal government or individuals will come at them and say, hey, you are running a monopoly. Like, nobody's going to watch say there was an SFL. Nobody's going to watch that. They're only watching the NFL. And because of that, you have set the seats to the games at a certain price. So that's what it means. Like, you are colluding with other people to make sure people have to pay this. All right. So now, Harvard is not named in this lawsuit, but I think it's very interesting because Harvard has been coming under fire, as well as other Ivy League schools, which they are saying that Harvard's freshman class is more than 1/3 legacy students. And recent studies are saying that Harvard finds 43% of white students are legacy students, athletes, or related to donors or staff, aka students with money. So who knows if these students have any sense? I have no idea. However, the idea that Harvard is basically saying, like, the poors, they're fine. Leave the poors be. We want the cost of tuition for Harvard now is about $40,000 a year. Is insane. So the rising cost of tuition is just simply a business. They have taken what should be a public good, which is education. Society does better when you have an educated society, a society that understands proper history, which in America, they don't teach proper history, a society that is able to advocate for themselves, a society that knows, like, how does our mess of a government even supposed to run so we don't get taken advantage of. And they've taken that public good and what should be a necessary good for everyone, the right to education, and they have commodified education, which is why all of these schools, including state schools, are to blame for this. The cost of a state school now is exorbitant. It's so exorbitant. And what's interesting is the cost of professor salaries have not gone up. Professors are still barely making it, particularly if you're an adjunct. If you are an adjunct, God bless you. If you're an associate professor, what they have decided to do is add a lot of admin layers of staff to schools. There are provosts now, there are presidents, there are vice presidents, there's a CEO, there's this, that, and the next. None of those people teach class. They just sit there and, I don't know, smile and wave at the babies. I don't know what exactly they're doing, but the cost of tuition now is so exorbitant because tuition and school has been commercialized. So I think now would be a good time to go through the comments and then we'll circle back to Navient. All right. Hi, Windfire. Oh, I'm glad you watched it. If you haven't watched it, I did a podcast interview with Black Creators Club. They are so fun with Akila and Ebony, and I highly recommend y'all watch it. I think I did. I posted it on YouTube as a post and on Instagram, and I put a little excerpt on Instagram. So I'll probably do another one as well. So I had a lot of fun with them. So go head over to their channel and subscribe as well. All right. So, NYC Black Honey. My husband had Navient this month. He signed on to check when he had to pay. The balance was zero. Come to find out his student loan was sold to another company. Shady practice. A lot of these student loan servicers are selling off people's debts, which is wild. I have Fed loan. Fed loan is slowly selling off everybody to other people. I haven't gotten sold off yet. Please, I really hope not. For what it's worth, like FedLoan has been a decent student loan servicer to have for me. The user interface on their website is nice. To be honest, I'm very much used to it. I don't want somebody else because I want to see like how much are you charging me? How much interest am I getting? Am I getting charged every day? I want it in a place that I know where it is on the screen. So there's that. Hey, Sam. I'm glad you made it to live. So Sam works in higher education as an adjunct. So very curious about your opinion. Okay. Hi, Muntu. Oh, in terms of Big Law Investor, yes, definitely go check their website out. Hi, Galen. I refinanced with SoFi and found a lower offer, and SoFi beat the other offer and paid me $100. Oh, that's great. Big Law Investor also, if you already have private loans, they do a referral program. So some of their referrals are between $300 and $500 too for refinancing something you already were going to do. So that's a nice added bonus as well. All right. So I'm just going to go through some of the comments before we continue on with the Navient case. All this expensive education to type effectiveness point for just for an employer to tell you you don't have enough experience. Exactly, child. A mess. A mess. Galen, right. I'd be very curious too. So in the 80s, the price decreased 1 year by 4%. And to Galen's point, I've never seen a price decrease. The price would never decrease now because people are making money off of us. Which is sad, which is very sad. Violet Embers, my daughter is at UCF now. Oh, shout out to her. And I'm paying $6K a semester. That's crazy. UCF used to cost when I was in school, I think just tuition, I think it was around like 3 to maybe 4K max a semester. It was very cheap. It was very, very cheap. Okay. And that's like just for tuition. And then of course, like it's the room and board and the meal plan and like making sure that you're alive that really eats up like the cost that you're paying. So to Nani's point, my private university was $44,000 a year. Oh my gosh. That's like law school. Law school cost me, what did I pay? $225 at the end. Law school was, I think, just tuition $60K a year for 3 years. Yeah, it was. It was $60K a year, which is 180. And then plus it was in New York. I graduated from Brooklyn Law, so you cannot, sleep on the street. So paying for room and board was also expensive. I did live a year with my grandparents, which was like very helpful, but super, super expensive. Okay. Opulence Prime. I was born in 82. Community college was $28 a credit back in 02. I'm scared to check now. I have a son graduating high school soon and a daughter in college. Pray for me. Girl, I'm saying lots of prayers for you. Because it's not fair. And to be honest, it's the cost of education that's deterring young people that truly deserve to have an education and need to have an education from going. Which instead of us saying like, oh, people should do other things, if somebody wants to go to school, it shouldn't be so expensive. There's really no need for it to be so expensive. All right. So let's get back to it. Wow, Anika, this is wild. Most of my student loans were private from Sallie Mae, which is Navient. Yes, Sallie Mae, I don't know if they still are, but they are the former parent company of Navient. Sallie Mae is the devil. I said what I said. I feel in my spirit, Sallie Mae is the devil. Highest interest rate was a little over 14%. The idea that an interest rate for anybody should be 14% to get an education is wild. Is very wild. The interest rates right now for a mortgage to buy a house, a physical house that you live in, I believe are between 3 and 4%, 5% max maybe. But to get an education that should be free to you, for books that are, a lot of things are online for free now anyway, it's very predatory. It's giving predatory lending. It has always, to me, the minute I finally looked up how much I owed, is giving predatory lending. And to Nikita's point, the refund check was a trap too. It was the refund check, to be honest, set up very bad personal finance awareness in my mind, to be honest. I was like, oh, life lives by refund check. Like, what happens when you graduate? Like, I don't, nobody teaches you how to run anything. You're like, oh, well, I sign my name, I get this check, I go to class. I at one point in college, I had three jobs and still had student loans. It made no sense. It never made any sense. Okay, so let's go. Thank you, Antonio. When my mom told me she graduated college in the 80s and told me she declared bankruptcy off the loans right after, I was done with her for a minute. You know, I'm not going to question her. I'm not going to question her. And to Vani's point, when I got my master's, I was so bitter because I couldn't get a job and was unemployed. But then I got a notice to start paying my student loans. There's no empathy, understanding, or awareness for students and young people, or of any age, taking out these loans to get a job. Like, a good example of this is teachers. A lot of high school teachers now are required to get a master's degree, yet the raise is abysmal. If anything, teachers are needed in society because you can't, like, children need a proper education, but yet we don't pay teachers. And yet we require them to do this. And then it's, oh, well, after 10 years, you can get your loans forgiven. Maybe if you stay the whole 10 years. And there's a lot of loopholes, like with the public student loan forgiveness program. It's just a mess. It's very just a mess. All right. And to financial baby steps, that'll be the last one we read, and then we'll go through Navient, because if you've watched my student loan videos, y'all know this. Me and Sallie Mae used to get into arguments. So I'll read this comment and then I'll tell y'all what I have no shame about saying anymore. So Sallie Mae's a stalker. They used to call my old roommate so much for payment. She would ask if they were hiring so she could have a job to pay them, and they thought she was kidding, but she was serious. Sallie Mae used to call me when I had no job. When I first graduated law school, I had no job, was looking for a job, didn't find a job yet. And Sallie Mae called and was like, oh, your student loans are due. So I asked, like, oh, can I have like forbearance, or like, what's the process? I don't have a job yet. They said, absolutely not. You need to pay these. And I was like, well, I don't have a job. They said, when are you getting the job? We need to input in the system when you're going to start working. To which then I got a little bit annoyed with them. I was like, how am I supposed to know that if I'm applying for the job? So I hung up the phone. Okay. Sallie Mae called back the next day. I was like, I'm not answering her. Sallie Mae proceeded to call me from different numbers 3 times a day, every day, to the point where one time I just got into a full-blown argument with the Sallie Mae worker. And I told them, I'm going to block your number. And they said, that's fine, miss. We'll continue to call you from a different one. The people that work at Sallie Mae give the energy that the people at McDonald's that don't want to give you extra sauce give. Why? What was the reason? None. And I still didn't pay them until I got the damn job. So on that note, speaking of another borrower who allegedly harasses people, Navient. So Navient was sued and they settled their lawsuit. And to make sure we're crystal clear, never admitted to any of their alleged wrongdoings. They settled the lawsuit, in their words, to avoid further expensive litigation. Interesting. So what happened in 2019, the lawsuit started, and basically, this is from NerdWallet, so they had a very good breakdown. So we're just going to use their breakdown. So shout out to them. The lawsuit uncovered an internal memo that shed light on Navient's strategy for collecting loan payments. The internal memo was written in 2010 by a senior director at Navient's former parent company, who none other than insert curse word Sally Mae. So, on the topic of forbearance, the memo indicated our battle cry remains forbear them, make them relinquish the ball. Said another way, we are very liberal with the use of forbearance once it is determined that a borrower cannot pay cash or utilize other entitlement programs. Basically, what Navient wanted student loan borrowers to do, allegedly, instead of going on an income-based repayment plan, which income-based repayment plans do have their flaws, which is if your income is low and you're paying the minimum, your interest is racking up. You're not in default. It's still current, but the interest is racking up. It is not a perfect system. I don't even think it's a good system. However, the forbearance system is awful. As somebody who has forbeared their loans, because at first I didn't have a job, when you forbear your loans, you don't think about them. You don't see them. They're in forbearance. The interest continues to rack up. You pay nothing. You're not paying anything towards the interest. You're not paying anything towards the principal. Navient allegedly, instead of telling people, hey, there's income based, like Stephanie, you're not making a lot of money, but here, at least with income based, pay a little bit. It will never touch your principal, most likely with this, but at least you can pay a little bit on this interest so you don't owe us exorbitant amounts of money. Instead, they just pushed people allegedly into forbearance. Said, you don't have any money? Don't pay. Of course, anybody that doesn't have a job or is barely surviving is like, okay, I guess I'll just do forbearance. That's what the student loan company told me to do. I suppose I'll do it. On top of that, it was specific people they targeted, so people that allegedly like couldn't pay. Also, they allegedly targeted people that went to for-profit colleges. For-profit colleges, notoriously, Trump owned one, which is now defunct, notoriously target people that unfortunately are unable to finish the degree. They notoriously don't actually offer a very good education, if any type of education at all. It's very much giving sham and scam for profit colleges. All of the public universities, as well as the private universities, they're technically all nonprofit colleges. They're not for profit colleges. Even though they're making a lot of money, it's complicated. The way we're allowed to set up corporations in this country is very, very interesting. So they targeted people at for-profit colleges. A lot of these people never finished the degree, so they never were able to recoup, like, oh yeah, now I'm making more because I have the degree. None of that happened. And so they sued. So basically, the bulk of that money is going towards people that went to for-profit colleges. So if you went to a public institution, a private institution is most likely not going to you. You would be very much aware, and that's where the majority of the $1.7 billion is going. And it's specifically people whose private loans originated with Sally Mae between 2002 and 2010 that have defaulted and then were charged off. So it was people that they couldn't pay it. There was no way they could pay that. It's a very specific set of people. And then that's whose loans got charged off. And then there is a tiny little amount of restitution going towards hundreds of thousands of people in the lovely sum of $260. Now, between me, you, and the internet, $260 would not even cover my minimum payment. So that's what they're doing with that. They said, okay, if you have federal loans and, like maybe you feel like we've been harassing you, and maybe you feel like we've been bothering you, and maybe you feel like we're predatory, here is $260. Now go away from me with this. So there is no giant windfall coming from Navient for most people. There is no giant forgiveness coming. There is no giant reckoning of a lot of these very predatory student loan companies actually having to pay a decent amount of restitution to people. There is no reason why people should have student loan interest rates above 4%. There is no reason, none whatsoever. And yet here we are. So people in the US seem to think sometimes that the US is the only country in the world, which I find very interesting, as it is not. And particularly when it comes to student loans, the number one, every once in a while, pushback I see with people, very rarely on my channel, but sometimes when I have my student loan monthly videos, but a lot of times on the personal finance bloggers and the personal finance like Instagrams that I follow for like inspiration, there's always those crotchety, angry people. Student loan forgiveness is unfair. I didn't get to go, so you need to pay, blah, 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 blah. Because they're very much only care about themselves and they don't understand like the greater good. Like it's very much giving whataboutism. So, what about the other countries who do it a different way? Because our way is very much foolish. So, according to this graph from Lending Tree, this is not like big enough. Well, I guess that's my fault. I should have made it a little bigger. This is how other student loans compare in other countries. So in France, the number of students is about 2.39 million. The average public university tuition, wait for it, wait, you're not prepared for this. So please clutch your pearls, is $217. Yes, you're hearing this right. The French said $217 is the average. They do not believe in saddling their young people with very, very expensive cost of education. Wow. The average student loan debt, therefore, is not applicable because, it's $200. So most people are doing all right. So the United Kingdom has tuition. However, they use all the United Kingdom to make a point. In Scotland, for Scottish citizens, they don't pay tuition. It's completely free. There are a few countries in the EU that tuition is completely free. So this number, the average public university tuition. So these are public university tuitions, by the way. The $0 to $300, I would say is not 100% accurate because again, Scotland is dragging that down because Scotland said, well, it's free for us. It's free for us over here. So Germany, is doing pretty well. Germany also is one, I would say, like one of the much more progressive countries. They're around 200 million students. The average public university there is $12,000. So a bit higher than the $8,000 here in the US for public school tuition. The average student loan debt is $55,000. So there seems a bit higher, but they have automatic income-based repayment and their student loan interest rates are significantly lower. So over the course of time, their student loan debt is less than ours. So ours, and I'll just jump down really quickly to the United States, the around 20 million students in the United States, average public university tuition, and this is per year, is $8,000, with the average student loan debt in the United States sitting around $30,000. And we have income-based repayment. And then what does that say? On request. For income-based repayment in the United States, you have to ask for it and you have to know to go into your student loan service provider website. So Fed Loan for me, I had to figure out, I was like, okay, I have income-based as an option, repay as an option. There are 5 different options. If you're the first one to go to college in your family, you have no idea what any of that means. If you do not select income-based, they will then put you on standard repayment. My standard repayment plan when I graduated law school, I think it was set to like $2,400. It was something crazy. And I was like, who has $2,400? I was like, huh? From where? Especially when I made 30 grand. I was like, huh? This is more than my paycheck. This is not going to work. This didn't make any sense. So you have to ask for it in the United States. What I find is very interesting is Australia. Australia has a very, I would say, one of the best plans in terms of, I think education should be free. It's not completely free there, but if we can't get to free, which makes sense, does not make sense that we can't get to free. Free makes all of the sense. We pay a lot of money in taxes. We could really afford free education, but I digress. In Australia, they have their higher education loan program, which is called HELP. See, even the name sounds very nice. It sounds very inviting. Sally Mae sounds like a crotchety woman who lived in 1663 in the big house. Like Sally Mae does not sound like a nice lady. So provides interest-free in Australia, interest-free loans to university students. Repayment for the 2020-2021 academic year begins at 1% of the borrower's income once it reaches 46,620 Australian dollars. So that's around 33,000. So they have a two-prong approach. One, they don't have interest. Two, you don't start your payment until you at least make what they determine as a livable wage, which would be a great, great program. Because why is Sally Mae calling people that don't have a job? Why? What's the purpose of harassing people? What's the purpose of adding to anxiety? This is a recent graduate that's already probably feels like a failure and is like, shit, I don't have a job. My friends have a job. Goodness, I got to like, I need to get a job. Like I'm stressed. Like I'm not eating. I'm not doing any of these things. And then here you go, Sally Mae, like, hello, my money, by the way. My money, my money. And to put that against how it works in the United States, which let me make me small, their debt payoff is significantly faster than ours because, again, they're only starting their debt payment once they make a livable wage in Australia, and it starts at 1% of what they make. So it's proportional. It's okay, you know what? You're not living, rolling in the dough, but you're going to pay a little bit so you can learn because people are very big in the US on personal responsibility instead of actual social welfare and actual community and taking care of each other. So they're learning personal responsibility by paying 1% of the loan, which is reasonable. So in Australia, it takes students around 8 to 12 years to pay off their debt versus in the US, it takes people 17 to 20 years to pay off their debt on average. 17 to 20 years to pay off your debt in the US if you can ever pay off the debt. There are plenty of people in the US that never get to pay off their debt. That it's just not possible. It's not happening for them. And it's because we have predatory interest rates. If my interest compounds about $40 a day, let's do some math. My least favorite thing to do, but hopefully I don't mess this up. $40,000 a day. There are 365 days in the year, which brings us to a whopping $14,600 a year. If your interest is growing at $14K a year and you are stuck in a job that is barely paying you any money, the likelihood of you paying that off is highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Which is why I quit my job when I made 30K. I was like, well, this is not going to work. I'm going to have to go figure out how to make some more money, or this interest is just going to snowball out of hand, which a lot of people do not have those opportunities, which is what it is. And it's very sad. So with that being said, let's go through the comments because we've now gone through the whole thing. All right. Okay. Child, I don't know why anybody. Let's see. Let's go. Okay, I'm trying to remember where I left off before. Okay. I'm laughing at y'all. Okay. Let's do. To Vonnie's point, yes, income-based repayment is also a trap as well. Yes, I can't stress that enough. Income-based repayment will keep you not paying anything or little to nothing on the principal balance. The principal balance is what you have to chip away at because the interest will just grow. It will just grow and grow and grow. You have to get rid of the interest and then finally get to the principal balance, which is a lesson I have been learning and has been like super rough. It has been very much rough. To Sam's point, when you make $800 a month, how could you pay your loans? I'm speaking from experience. Exactly. My first job out of law school, I made 2,000 after taxes in New York City. I made $2,000 a month, which is more than that. But also in New York City is basically like poverty wage. Is poverty wage. The only way I could afford to have that job because my grandparents kindly let me live with them, and I had to eat my humble pie and ask them and say like, "Hey, I'm going to take this job. Can I live here?" Because $2,000, I can't pay rent and eat and live with that. So can I live with y'all, please? So I appreciate them. Thank you, grandparents. All right, so let's go. So if you're just tuning in now, we finished all of the important stuff of the live. So if you want to scroll to the beginning, if not, you're just going to see forehead and comments. So I feel like now I'm just going to say that at the end now because sometimes people will like jump in and be like, wait, what's happening? I'm like, oh, I'm just reading through the comments now. And we'll read them out loud and like talk about them. Okay. To read Kicker's point, my friend is from China. She has loans, but she said they're so low in China, it is almost impossible that you won't be able to pay them back. As it should be. Isn't the goal for us to pay them back, as in the loan shouldn't be that much in the first place? They are not. Education is wonderful. I'm all for education. We need more. It's the cost of education that in the US is out of hand. It's out of hand because what has changed from the 70s and 80s to now in terms of education? What has changed? Because if in the 70s and 80s it was a reasonable price and people were able to pay it, has our education all of a sudden decided to come with filet mignon? I didn't get any in class. I wasn't, I don't think they're giving out free food besides like cheap Little Caesars pizza. So I'm not exactly sure what is the reason. To visual bandit, I'm moving to Europe. I know at least one or two people that I've worked with that are American that went to Europe for college. They all, I think they had a family member because I think there are like some rules around it, but that's what they did. And I was like, oh, smart. France with their $200 public school education. To Robert's point, France hurt my feelings, y'all. Listen, France has a lot of issues. Somebody who worked for a French tech company, particularly living in a legally enforced colorblind society, which is foolishness. However, tuition is not one of their problems. Tuition is literally not one of their problems. A. Thomas, I love Germany. I hear great things about Germany in terms of quality of life, in terms of like awareness, in terms of these days, like how they try to treat people. UK, I think SL as student loans used to be $3,000 a year. Good time. Wow. And to Violet Emperor's point, it's laughable that the US is the alleged superpower, but other countries are working with their citizens to have better overall standards of living. One of the most like brazen things about the US that I find like so fascinating and then also so frustrating. The GDP, the gross domestic product in the United States, which shows like this is as a country how great we're doing. I believe, let me look it up to make sure I'm right because child people love a fact check. A significant amount of it, before I look up what the exact amount, a significant amount of it is actually US consumers. It's US consumers propping up the US GDP. It's consumerism in the US buying everything why the GDP is so high. It is not because people are buying American stuff. It's not because we're exporting something. It is because in the US, we have to pay all these exorbitant prices for things. It's wild. It's truly wild. And college education is one. All right. Lakeisha, the French really tried my ancestors, but I might have to move. Listen, listen. At this point, I might have set aside my qualms with them. I might have. Sam Acosta's point, we have to move to really investing in education. We all need education, maybe not college, but we all have to learn. Exactly. We need to invest. Like, why is that teachers in kindergarten, second, third, fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th grade teachers are so underpaid? Why are they in classes with 35 kids in one class? Can you imagine 35 little humans in your face? I'm the oldest of 7. I love children, not 35 of them in my face. Barely 6 of them in my face, to be honest. I'm like, this is a lot. Y'all are hectic. What is happening? That it's craziness. It's nothing but craziness. There is currently in many states right now a teacher shortage. And instead of giving teachers proper pay, people are like, oh, people don't want to work. People are being lazy. And I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense. All right. So Miss G, I can vouch for this in terms of Australia and paying off your student loans. African Australian here and paid off my degree in less than 10 years. I'm mortified by the student loans in the US. Well, congrats to you, first of all. That's great. It's a great accomplishment. And yes, in the US, it's nothing but like foolery and nonsense. To be honest, not to be dismal, but it's very much giving foolery and nonsense. All right. To Robert's point, it's giving sharecropping vibes. It is. It's giving, I have to go to this job because I need to pay these student loans. If I don't go to this job, I don't pay these student loans. If I don't pay these student loans, then Sally Mae will call me 5 times a day. And then if I continue down the cycle and I quit my job and I choose me, well, then I can't eat and I can't pay these student loans and Sally Mae will call me 5 times a day. It's very much giving foolishness. Very much giving foolishness. And to Jessica's very good point, 17 to 20 years sounds like a prison sentence, which 17 to 20 years is the average amount of time that Americans pay off their student loan debt. And now remember, this is the average American owes $30,000, which $30,000 is probably what it starts out as. And the longer you don't pay it, the interest just compounds every single day. It just grows, and grows and grows. It's a snowball. Kiki for free. People are racking up 14K in interest each year, and the boomers wonder why everyone is job hopping. Exactly. When you job hop, you are more likely to get a significant increase. That is how I raise my salary over the years, by being like, listen, I feel like I'm being underpaid. I would like this. And then being told no and being like, okay, bye. And then being told, oh, I would have gave you the money. I was like, but you didn't. So I left. So I have to go now. I have to choose me, and I have to choose Sally Mae, apparently, because she will not leave me alone unless I pay her, and y'all not giving me any money. So, okay. TKO's point. IDK how people in NYC survive, honestly. You know what? 8 years later, I'm wondering how I've survived all these years. It doesn't make sense. It's not sustainable. I've said this numerous times. Like, eventually, like, I will leave sooner rather than later. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. We pay city, state, and federal tax. And yes, the subway is great. I'm glad we have the subway, but they cleaned the subway for the first time in 100 years during the panorama. The first time in 100 years. So what they do with our tax money here is beyond me. I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't clean the subway. The rats are running rampant. I'm not sure what is happening with the money. Not sure. Couldn't tell you. Could not tell you. Lakeisha, what advice do you have for a first gen grad like myself? Well, congratulations and kudos to you, first of all. I'll be starting a job next month. Yay! But it's not even in my field. I just don't want to starve. I would say if you have student loans, start with your budget of assessing like what are all your needs. So again, you don't need to starve. So how much money you're going to spend on food, how much money you have to pay for housing, electric, Wi-Fi, let's be realistic. You want your Netflix, maybe a Hulu, whatever, and the student loans as like a non-negotiable, you have to pay those. And then if being very cognizant that the recent grads, I'm sure, are getting paid pennies still. If there's any money left over, I would highly recommend you allocate some fun money for yourself. It's miserable to just pay off your student loans. It's miserable. It will be miserable. So like maybe like 10% of it, like what's left over for yourself. So like if you want to get your nails done, if you want to go have a nice lunch once a week, and then put the rest of the extra money towards the student loans. Because when I first started paying off my student loans, which I said this a long time ago in one of my videos, I tried it the Dave Ramsey way. I can't stand Dave Ramsey now, but I didn't have any sense and I didn't know. And I was like, well, I've ignored these things for 4 years. I need to get on it. Like, okay, it seems like a lot of people are doing this. And his way is very much rice and beans. If you have student loans, if you have debt, you're not allowed to eat out. You're not allowed to do any of this. After 6 months of that, I was so depressed because it's not normal. It's not normal to live that way. Also, it's not sustainable if you have 6-figure loans. If you only owe, and I'm saying only in comparison to the $304,000 trifling dollars I started with, if you only owe 30 grand and you make an amount where like, okay, I can pay this off in 2 years, 3 years if I try, I still wouldn't recommend doing that. The only way you can just deprive yourself of everything is maximum a year. If not, you will just feel very miserable. You will feel depressed. But also, What I realized after 6 months, it didn't teach me good money habits to do that. It taught me to like have a very much like scarcity mindset of, oh, I'm like terrified, like I'm not going to have any money. I'm terrified I'm going to starve. It's better to budget for actual life. It's better to say, you know what makes me happy? Once every 3 months, buying a new set of earrings. Yes. That are Black owned. Yes. Shout out to Zarina Akers. Oh, actually, this is her top two. So she makes beautiful clothes that are Black owned. Makes me happy. I think they were like $20. I don't go shopping that often, but you know what? Who cares if I give that $20 towards the student loans? Who cares at that point? I've already allocated whatever thousands of dollars this month. $20 for me is not going to kill anybody. So I highly recommend, Lakeisha, you set aside some money for you from your check, because if not, it will just make you miserable. Now, if you don't have any loans, I recommend you invest that money in your 401k and all of that, which we probably need to cover some more of that on the channel. But if you want to go to like the Big Law Investor website, he has some really good, I would say like foundational information on when you're first starting your job, what accounts do you set up? Nobody at work ever explained 401k. It took like 3 years till I finally worked up the nerve to like ask my coworker. I was like, what is this? Like, what does this mean? So I didn't know what it was. Like if you're a first generation college grad, most likely like maybe your parents do or don't know those things. Like mine didn't. So like they didn't explain any of it to me. So I had to like ask a friend. But obviously, like when you're working in certain environments, like especially if you're the only, you kind of feel a little ostracized, you feel a little dumb. That's how I felt about it personally. So it was very nice to finally like, okay, what is this? Like, what am I supposed to do? And I had a friend explain it to me and be like, okay, set up the 401k, set up this is how it works. And that relieves so much burden from my life. If you're paying off your student loans, I highly recommend also investing and getting your 401k match if your company's giving it as well, because it's free money. Why? You would never walk by $10 on the street. I would never walk by $10 on the street. I see $10 on the street, even in Corona, I'm going to take my hand sanitizer. I'm going to spray the $10 and I'm going to pick it up. Who's walking by $10? So why would you walk by your 401k match? So, all right. To Robert's point, the colleges, if they're not paying teachers, where's all that money going? To all the corporations they're selling us to. That's where it's going. That's where it's going. That's where it's going. Okay. Yes, we are. So Constantico, another colonizer exposed video. Yes, I have been dragging. This is completely my fault. I'm going to try. Tomorrow's Friday. I will be honest. It will get posted this weekend on Patreon. France is done. So colonizer exposed on Patreon. We are currently on France. We've been on France since December. It is my fault. And we are doing part 3. So part 1 was talking about France's colonization. France's colonization specifically of certain parts of Africa and how that has continued, and France's neo-colonization of certain parts of Africa. And then part 2 was about France's colonization of Haiti and the Caribbean, and specifically about the Haitian Revolution, which, to be honest, is a story and a historical act that should get much, 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 much more screen time than it currently gets. The feat that the Haitian people have accomplished by themselves by being the first free Black republic is nothing short of amazing. So I love doing the research on that. That was like very interesting to me. And then part 3, we're actually doing France's colonization of Middle Eastern and Muslim countries and their current problematic dynamic with people of Muslim backgrounds. So how that has played out over all the years. So we're going to talk a lot about Tunisia and Algeria and Morocco, and then specifically their hijab ban that they currently implemented. So that's what we're going to cover in that. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to Patreon. It'll be up there this weekend. Also, if you're not on Patreon right now, Patreon charges always the first of the month. So I highly recommend, because today's the 27th, not to sign up for it right now, but to sign up for it on the first of the month, because if not, I can't turn it off. It will charge you today and it will charge you again on the first. So just in case, so that for your budgeting, don't want to, double charge you. That's how the system is set up, which is something I think they're looking into. And to Opulence Prime's point, tuition is high because wage gaps feed capitalism. Yes. And tuition is high because high tuition and high student loans feed the racial wealth gap. The number one demographic graduating from colleges these days is Black women. The number one student loan borrower is also Black women. It's also us stuck with the student loans. So it's nothing but a mess. It's nothing but a depressing mess. All right. KO, the US K-12 public education system also falls behind compared to other developed countries and other quote unquote third world countries. I hate that word. The Jamaican public education system is better than the elementary public education system in America. Particularly, I remember being a kid and my cousins coming over and being like, oh, yeah, we're doing blah, 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 like high version of math. And I was like, what? I was like, we're not doing that. And also what we're doing, I'm like, I don't even understand anyway. But it was a very, very different public education system than we have. The US don't care about people. So there's that. I said it. I feel like I say this all the time, but Sam's point. I'm being asked if I want to teach in high school now. My teacher friends keep telling me don't do it. I feel like the kids would love you and your perspective, but I think teaching in high school is very rough. So I agree with your friends. My sister-in-law is a teacher, particularly in an underserved school and has been for 10 years. And the dedication of those teachers and the lack of recognition those teachers get is wild. It's wild because you have to be very dedicated to be like, I'm going to show up every day for these kids and nobody is going to, help. Nobody's going to give me any resources and I'm still going to do it. It's the fact that in the States, we have been conditioned to get a school purchasing list, whatever the hell the list used to be called when we were little. Like you have to buy Kleenex, you have to buy glue, you have to do all these things. Like, why? Public schools are funded by property tax. Why didn't the property tax pay for the dry erase board? Like, what are we all buying it stuff for? I never understood that. I was always so confused. Like, why do we always have to buy the school shopping list? Like, why are we buying these things? Teachers, I've been seeing one of the saddest things I've been seeing. A few of the personal finance bloggers I follow are also teachers. They fundraise for their school shopping list every year. They set up a GoFundMe and they're like, hey, I'm fundraising for my classroom. Can you donate? Public schools, public schools. It's wild. It's completely wild. Madison S. I hate that people say that about teachers not wanting to work. Sometimes the conditions are terrible for teachers. They are terrible. Also, we're still in a panorama and everybody knows children are cute, but they are dirty. Children do not wash their hands. Children are just running bags of germs. Cute ones, very cute, but kids are messy. Kids are messy. I can completely understand why somebody's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm very good over here in my house. Not next to that. All right. Okay, so let's see. Yes, I think this is for the question about like if you're a recent grad and you just got a job, what to do. Get an emergency fund. Congratulations. Yes. So an emergency fund and a fund for emergency for fund too. I think it's a great idea. Awesome. Well, cool. I know I've kept you all the hour. It's 8:15. So let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Not a hussy. It's so funny because I'll scroll through and it's like certain words. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? All right. Yes. Shout out to the Haitians. Okay. Okay. All right. And then to Reed's point, how did you make a math tutor my first year in college? I can still hear her saying, I don't know how they teach you here in America, but let me show you how we learn in Jamaica. Listen, my cousins used to clown me. They would come visit and be like, Stephanie, like, what are you doing? I'm like, listen, first of all, I don't already like math, so I don't want to hear it from you. But second of all, like, I don't know what's in that book, but that looks very advanced to this basic math that I'm learning over here in the public school in Miami. So It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. So, on that note, I will see y'all later in the week. And let me know if there are any topics you specifically want to cover next week for our live. I feel like I was going to tell y'all something and I forgot. But yeah. I have like a list of throwbacks that we're going to do still. I have a lot of lists. I'm going to be very honest, and we'll probably talk about it in my student loan update video. Switching careers has been interesting. It has been interesting in all the good ways. I don't miss being a full-time lawyer. No, I'm not going to miss that. However, I think the loss of schedule has been a little jarring. Like, huh? Like, what am I supposed to do with myself? Like, what? Okay. So that's been interesting. So that has been interesting. But yes. So the Cardi B lawsuit win, that is on, I covered that with Grace. So Grace Report on her channel. I've been on YouTube this week, but like not with y'all. Wednesday, yesterday, I don't know what day it is. Tuesday maybe. So it's on her channel if y'all want to watch that. And we talked about next steps, and then we talked about like YouTube potentially getting sued. I don't think Cardi B is going to sue YouTube, but I think eventually YouTube will get sued by somebody. Litigation is very tiresome. I think she's very much wanting to close this chapter, which is understandable, but so yeah, we'll see. So, on that note, I hope y'all have a good night or morning wherever you are, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch y'all later with my wine next week, which I'm very glad about. So, I've made it through. I've made it through dry January. So, I'll see y'all later. Bye.